time to revisit a horror anthology, specifically Trilogy of Terror 2. Trilogy of Terror was a classic from 1975. It featured Karen Black in 3 different short films, cementing her as a horror icon. Trilogy of Terror 2 was released in 1996, and it follows the same format as the first, except this time it stars Lysette Anthony in 3 short films. Like the first movie, Trilogy of Terror 2 was directed by Dan Curtis. Unlike Trilogy of Terror, Dan wrote the sequel. Now, like my Trilogy of Terror Hyp3r Halloween review, I'm going to discuss each short film in detail and then talk about which one was my favorite, and then talk about the movie overall. That said, let's start with the first title, The Graveyard Rats. The Graveyard Rats revolves around a millionaire and his adulterous wife Laura, played by Lysette Anthony. The millionaire, Ansford, discovers that Laura has been cheating on him with her cousin Ben, who also works for Ansford. He records one of her sexual rendezvous with Ben and threatens to cut her out of his will. Laura doesn't listen to Ansford and meets with Ben later on to discuss what happened. Ben comes up with the ingenious idea to kill Ansford and take his fortune. The two put Ben's plan into motion, much to Laura's chagrin, and they murder the old man by pushing him down the stairs. Laura takes over the company, burns the recordings of her and Ben, and the two really don't hide their relationship. The two eventually travel to the cemetery where Ansford is to be buried and meet Arlie Stubbs, the cemetery caretaker. He tells Laura that Ansford is supposed to be buried in the south portion of the cemetery, but he said he would advise against it because of the monstrous rats in that portion of the cemetery. Rats that eat everything, including the dead. Laura and Ben don't heed Stubbs' advice, and Ansford is buried in the rat-infested portion of the cemetery. Back in the city, Laura hears the terms of the will and finds out that Ansford was liquidating his business and had the estate sold off with his fortune going to various accounts that she doesn't have access to, leaving Laura with nothing. The books were burned, the accounts were microfilmed, and Laura assumes Ansford was buried with it. Laura, of course, needs this to get access to his money. With nothing to lose, Ben and Laura go back to the cemetery and begin to dig up Ansford. Of course, they find Arlie Stubbs there trying to open the coffin. Ben kills Arlie, then Laura kills Ben. What a twist. Seriously though, this twist really does come out of nowhere. And do you think Laura sees the titular graveyard rats? Boy howdy does she. The rats pull Ansford's body into the tunnel they dug and begin gnawing away. Laura pursues, and the rats drag Ansford through the tunnel as Laura follows. She gets the watch off of Ansford that she thinks the microfilm is in, and the rats start gnawing on her. She tries to escape, and, of course, the rats get her. And that's pretty much how that movie ends. Let's move on to the second film, titled Bobby. Bobby revolves around the story of a grieving mother dealing with the loss of her son. The mother is played by Lysette Anthony. She does what any grieving parent does. She attempts to conjure up his spirit and raise Bobby from the dead while her husband is away on business. Apparently, the ritual works, and Bobby shows up at the front door, shivering and afraid. She brings him in and asks if he remembers what happens. Bobby recounts how he went underwater and couldn't breathe. He also mentions ending up on a beach, and his mother starts mentioning that she knew that he didn't die. Bobby starts freaking out and asking questions like, "Was I always good?" and "Were you always nice to me?" Then he questions why he was by the water in the first place. He ultimately asks his mother to play hide and seek and freaks out when she says no. She walks away, but he hides anyway. She searches for him and he starts throwing things at her. I think she's starting to regret this at this point, but I digress. Bobby attempts to kill her, freaking Bobby's mom out. Bobby also makes the phone ring and pretends to be his father before deciding to become the seeker in the next round of hide and seek. There's a game of cat and mouse until Bobby eventually chases his mom to her room. Honestly, I'm left wondering why they even included this film. And the reason I'm saying that is, well, spoilers, but the last film involves the Zuni fetish doll, and I imagine that film is going to be a lot like the film Bobby. You know, like the first Zuni fetish doll where Karen Black was being chased around a house. In any case, Bobby's mom shoots Bobby. He falls off the balcony into the water, but then he comes back. Bobby reveals himself to be a demon. The demon took Bobby's place because, and this is in the demon's words, Bobby killed himself to get away from his mother and allowed the demon to take his place in the ritual because he didn't want to come back to her. Then the movie ends. Huh. Well, on to He Who Kills. So before I get started on this short film, I read from the title that the Zuni doll is based on a short story called Prey, written by Richard Matheson. I'm honestly not sure if I mentioned that in my Trilogy of Terror 1 review, but apparently the short story was released in 1969 in an issue of Playboy. And there are just way too many funny coincidences there. But I do want to look into that more, for science, and I may just report my findings in another video, or in the comments section, either or. Anyway, again, I bring this up because I just don't remember if I mentioned it in my Trilogy of Terror review, and I thought it was interesting. Moving on. Right off the bat, we learn that He Who Kills is going to be a follow-up to the Amelia short from the first Trilogy of Terror. Amelia's boyfriend called the cops after going to her apartment. He was worried about her, so he went to check up on her. Can I say, I really like this idea. I was honestly really curious how they were going to shoehorn in the Zuni fetish doll. And you know what? This was probably the best way. Anyway, back to the story. Amelia and her mother are both dead. Amelia also got an amazing new apartment between the first movie and now. I guess they couldn't get the same apartment. But that's neither here nor there because the cops immediately find the Zuni doll in the oven. It's burnt to a crisp, mind the teeth, but it still looks as menacing as ever. The police take the Zuni doll to the museum curator, Dr. Simpson, played by Lysette Anthony. The police want her expertise on what the doll is, because they believe it was a part of a ritualistic killing and are afraid that it will happen again. Dr. Simpson begins picking away at the charred doll, revealing it to only be surface-level damage. Her assistant jokes that it's restoring itself before going over the rules of the doll. Take the chain off and it comes to life. Does she put the chain back on? Come on, there wouldn't be a movie if they did that. Dr. Simpson ends up blowing off a date with her boyfriend to work on the doll. The doll cleans up pretty nicely, but the warrior spirit soon reveals itself and the doll comes back to life. Dr. Simpson goes to eat pizza with the security guards at the museum, and the doll is not there when she gets back. And it took her knife. Dr. Simpson believes that the person that murdered Amelia and her mother took the doll, but the doll reveals itself soon enough. One of the security guards attempts to return to his station, but he's lured into a dinosaur exhibit that is also in this museum. The doll is hidden in a statue of a person with a bow and arrow. Apparently, the bow and arrow was actually rigged to fire because, the Zuni doll bites the string holding it in place and the arrow hits the guard square in the chest. The doll then stalks Dr. Simpson through the museum, after cutting all the phone lines and killing the remaining guard. The Zuni doll is as crazy as it was in the first Trilogy of Terror. It whips around very quickly and makes all kinds of noises. The noises almost remind me of the Gremlins from Gremlins 2. Anyway, Dr. Simpson throws everything she can at the doll, but that thing is too wild and crazy to be stopped. This film definitely seems to up the ante on how crazy this doll acts, and I honestly love every minute of it. Dr. Simpson tries to chop the little bugger up with an axe, but she barely misses. And after that, there's actually a lot of similarities between Amelia and He Who Kills in terms of what's going on. So much so that there are some shot-for-shot remakes. Like the scene of the doll getting trapped in a suitcase and it starts trying to cut its way out and Dr. Simpson tries to grab the knife with her fingers. Dr. Simpson ultimately slams the doll into a container of sulfuric acid that she has for reasons. Instead of leaving it in there though, she attempts to take it out and it attacks her. After everything is said and done, the spirit of the doll possesses Dr. Simpson and she attacks her boyfriend, who returns to pick her up for the night. Man, that was a lot. So this was my first watch of Trilogy of Terror 2, and I'm still not quite sure what to make of it. If I had to rank the short films, I would put He Who Kills at number 1, The Graveyard Rats at number 2, and Bobby at number 3. He Who Kills is pretty much on par with Amelia in terms of the story. I mean, it's basically the same story. Maybe I just liked it because I didn't care for the second short film, and anything after that was going to be good. He Who Kills tries to up the ante, given that there are more kills, but it isn't as claustrophobic as Amelia. It's still a fun film in my opinion. Both He Who Kills and Amelia are great shorts, although I will say I like Amelia better. The Graveyard Rats short film was decent, but nothing special. It's definitely better than Bobby though. I guess with a name like The Graveyard Rats, nothing is really left to the imagination. The fact that you don't really hear about them until about halfway through is annoying though. Plus the rats don't look great. I think I prefer the first film of the original Trilogy of Terror over this, but in terms of Trilogy of Terror 2, The Graveyard Rats is not bad. The actor that plays Ansford plays his part really well. Laura and Ben are just okay. The twist of Laura killing Ben really did come out of nowhere for me, or maybe I just wasn't paying enough attention. Laura goes from not wanting to kill anyone to murdering Ben to keep the fortune to herself. I guess he wasn't really being careful putting their relationship out there, but whatever. Bobby, the second film, I feel like could have been great. The premise is great, but the execution was a little lacking. The kid that played Bobby was annoying, and I just wasn't buying the whole premise. Apparently, Bobby was a remake of another Dan Curtis short. So I guess with two movies that take similar plots and are shot-for-shot remakes at points, it really seemed like Dan Curtis was trying to either relive his glory days of writing or attempting to bring them to a modern audience. Although I guess it could also be both of those. Well, all that said, I still recommend checking Trilogy of Terror 2 out. The first Trilogy of Terror really nails that 70s horror feel, whereas Trilogy of Terror 2 hits the 90s feel. Both are good in their own right, but the Zuni doll story is where these movies really shine. Definitely go check them out this Halloween if you haven't seen them before.